Hi and welcome to casualdiy DIY channel. Today's video is all about sanding. Tips and tricks of the sanding chore that we all have to go through. Hopefully they will help you out a little bit and make your sanding processes a little bit smoother and easier. So stay tuned. Before we're going to go into the tips and tricks I've got prepared for you today, I just want to say if you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. I do release new content each week and it does help me out if you do subscribe and obviously watch my videos. So how this video is going to go, guys? So basically we're going to start with some really simple and life improvement hacks and tricks to more bit advanced things that you can do in your shop. So no further ado, let's get into the tips and tricks of sanding. So the first one I've got for you is this one. So you've got a piece of board or piece of wood that you want to sand down, you put it on your bench and off you go. Well, if you start sanding with an orbital sander or palm sander or anything else like that, you're going to find yourself that the board moves around your bench, and then it's quite possible that you're going to scratch the other surface. So what's the solution here, guys? Well, it's dead simple. You just need to use one of these. So what is it, guys? Basically it's a material that you can put underneath your carpet and it stops the carpet from sliding around on your laminate flooring or your tiles or anything else, and you can buy it really inexpensively. You can get it off on IKEA, you can get it obviously on the internet. As you can see now, I've placed a piece of wood on it and it's not going anywhere. So it's not moving around at all, and on top of it you will not scratch the other side of your board. Okay, so the next trick, I'm not sure about you, but I've got a lot of my sandpaper in rolls. Usually what happens, I knock one down and it just rolls around my garage, or I try to rip it off in a nice way and it's not working. So basically the next hack is make something that will organize your sandpaper that you currently got in rolls. So what you're gonna need for that? So basically we need to build a box to start with. So I'm going to be using some leftovers of my OSB sheets, and the key ingredient here, guys, is a hacksaw blade. This will make sure that we're cutting a nice even piece of our sandpaper. So let's get to it, a nice and quick build. So the build is absolutely dead simple. As you can see, I'm using my table saw and a crosscut sled to put the pieces to the right sizes. And after that, we're just gonna screw them together and put the hacksaw blade on, and the build is finished. So it's time to install the hacksaw blade. I'm going to be adding some small washers, so it gives a bit of a space from the box itself, so it's easier to feed the paper. So as you can see, it's a very simple idea, but makes your life that little bit better. So you can You can actually put some French cleats on it and hang it on the wall, or screw it all to your wall, and off you go. Nice and simple trick there for you. So the next sanding tip, guys, is for you guys that use routers with this bit. So it's the U-shaped bit. So what you can cut with that, basically a juice groove on your serving board or your meat board, and it's when you do it, it's sometimes the finish is not the best, depending obviously on your router, on your bit. If it's not too sharp, it could leave some burn marks, and it's very difficult to actually sand that groove out. So this is what I've got for you guys. So basically we've got our board with a U-groove in it. So what do we actually need? Very simple. We need a piece of dowel and a sandpaper. Wrap it around like so, and off you go. Let's go to the next sanding tip. So if you're using a router and you're using a styling bit, for example, you make a style like this. Not sure if you can see it correctly. Yeah, again, it may not come out perfectly, so sanding of that is a fairly big chore, because you know there's multiple layers of that's been created by the style bit, and it's fairly difficult to actually sand it correctly and still you know, have the same features afterwards. So this is what you can do to improve your sanding of your styles. So what do we actually need? Well, it's actually absolutely dead simple. You know, the offcut with the same style that you just used on your main piece, and when you butt it up together, it will actually lock out with that style. So you put a bit of sanding paper in between and off you go. Let's test it. So as you've seen, nice and smooth. The styles is still there where it was. The lines are as sharp as they were, so perfect. And in the next sanding tip, we're actually going to do a sanding block. Something that I think everybody should have. It you know, it helps with the workflow. So what I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using a piece of 2x2 with the rounded edges as it was, and let's get to it. I'll show you how you can make a prime sanding block. So the first thing we need to do is cut the groove. I'm using my table saw with the crosscut sled, as you can see, to do that. Basically you can use the block as is, but we'll put another feature in this block to make our lives a bit easier and the sanding quality a lot better. So what we're going to be using is self-adhesive cork. It's only very thin material there, but it gives that a little bit of a softness when you're actually sanding your piece. It especially helps when you're trying to break the edges just a little bit. You know, you're not rubbing a hard piece of wood against another hard piece of wood. So this gives a lot better quality of finish when sanding. So let's put it on now. So as I mentioned, it's that simple. Just pull a bit of cork out. And there we go. And there we go. So the next tip is for all the owners of scroll saws. So when you're cutting some really fine, intricate designs on your boards, it's sometimes very hard to actually sand all them tight little spaces. So I'll show you a nice hack how you can transform your scroll saw into a sanding saw. So what are we going to be using in this build? Basically you need a used and dull blade, C8 glue, double-sided tape, and a really thin piece of wood. So the next step is to cut a piece of wood that would be more or less the length of the blade itself, and then it needs to be about 2 mm wider than the blade itself. So we've got a thin piece like this, and we're going to give it a quick sand. What we need to do next here, guys, is basically we need to glue on that piece of wood onto the blade. In the next step, we're going to use some double-sided tape that we're going to stick onto the piece of wood. And the next thing we need to do is to cut a bit of sanding paper. It needs to be a little bit wider than the piece of wood we've got, so when you go around the curves, it actually wraps around the paper, wraps around the blade, and it gives you a nice better finish. So let's install that back in the scroll saw and let's test it. Perfect. So as you've seen, you can transform your scroll saw into nice, really good sander as well, to sand out all the little pieces and voids that actually before were not accessible to you. And my final sanding tip for you guys here now. So basically you've got a piece that has got some curves in it, and it's, you know, sometimes difficult to actually sand that nicely with your hand or with anything else. So what we need to do for this build, basically we're going to use a really thin piece of wood, so it's flexible enough so that we can attach a bit of Velcro, and I've got these sanding pads that got the hook and loop system that will quite easily attach to the Velcro pads. So let's do it, guys. And there we go, guys, we've got this nice thin piece of wood that was quite easily bent to the curve of the wood. The next step is to put a bit of Velcro on that piece of wood. Obviously it needs to be as long as our sanding pad here, so I'm just going to mark it like that. Whack it on, and now the sanding pad with the hook and look system, you can just attach it to that. It's not gonna go anywhere, and it actually additionally gives it this nice cushy pad when you're sanding the curves. It will give you a better finish. As you can see, the piece is a little bit long, so I'm just gonna trim the ends of it just to make sure it's exactly the same size as the sanding pad. And let's try it out. And that concludes my sanding tricks and hacks video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find it very informative, and some of the things you will actually be able to implement into your workshops and your daily work. So if you did enjoy the video, please leave me that thumbs up button below. If you're not a subscriber and you managed to get this far, please consider subscribing to my channel, as I do bring new content each week, and your subscription helps me a lot to develop my channel and create new content. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you on my next video and my next project. Till then, take care.